Hi, I'm Alpha, and in today's video, we're gonna be reacting to what am I reacting to again? When Revenge Backfired by Be Amazed. Well, we're not reacting to it, we're just watching it, but I kind of need a video out because I haven't posted anything in 11 days, and I haven't made a video in 3 weeks. So yeah, let's go. I'm probably gonna get rid of the alpha corn. Actually, no, the alpha corn is iconic.
We all love hearing about cheaters who get exactly what they deserve, or bad bosses being publicly humiliated, or horrible friends being thoroughly exposed.
Yeah, right.
But these revenge plots and calculated acts of
I've watched this so many times. Yeah, I've watched it so.
Sabotage don't always go to plan, which is somehow even more entertaining. From bad dads who tried and failed to humiliate their families, to cheaters who got the ultimate lesson in karma, it's time to go through some revenge plots that went really, really wrong.
Yeah, some of these revenge plots just make no sense. From you know what, I'm gonna dump pennies on my family's house because I abandoned them and they had to make me pay child support. To, I'm gonna pour acid on my boyfriend's face because his family won't let him date me. That's just stupid. Boom.
Bad penergy.
Bad penergy. Even the puns are bad.
Have you ever had a bad boss? Maybe they snowed you under with work.
I've never had a bad boss because I've not worked a day in my life.
You couldn't do in time, or blamed you for something that wasn't your fault. Well, if you have, then this next story is for you. Back in
Let me get some food.
Last time, this caused a whole kerfuffle. Let's get someone from Ambox to okay. Before we do anything, we'll let them say whether it's acceptable. And she went, yeah, absolutely. So she emailed her, she said to me, should we go to Ambox or should we go to Christmas? I don't know, why don't we have to go? So she emailed Ambox.
Okay, so
2021, Andreas Flatten quit his job at OK Luxury Auto Works in Georgia. He claimed the job had a pretty toxic culture, and so decided to move on. However, his boss, Miles Walker, refused to give him his final paycheck. After he went silent on the matter, Andreas went to the Department of Labor, asking after the $915 Miles owed him. Then, a few weeks later, Andreas opened his door and discovered a gigantic pile of pennies on his driveway, which were covered in oil, along with his last paycheck that had a pretty...
Wow, very penny. See what I did?
nasty expletive scrawled on the front. Shocked, he and his girlfriend painstakingly shoveled every last penny into a wheelbarrow, realizing that this must be the way Miles had decided to pay him, in some 91,500 greasy pennies. It was a pretty
I think
childish form of revenge, but Andreas had no choice but to
Yeah.
deal with it. So he got in touch with
Exactly.
Coinstar, a coin collecting company, who agreed to collect the pennies and exchange them for bills. But they also asked if they could post a press release about the unusual incident on their website, as it made them look very good. Andreas said yes, not thinking much of it, but this press release got the attention of local and then national media, who all then covered the story, dragging
Yeah, that's
Miles
true.
and his business through the dirt. Miles tried to discredit the press release by posting a lot of nasty stuff about Andreas on the company website. But that's when the Department of Labor caught wind of the situation. Seeing the pennies, the press release, and the website slander, they then sued Miles for unfair retaliation against an employee. But as they were filing through this and going through Miles's records, they noticed he hadn't been paying his workers overtime, which he was required to do by law. As such, they slapped him with an eye-watering $40,000 bill in back pay to all the workers he'd screwed over. He was forced to cough over the full amount, all while national tabloids covered the story of his disgrace and one-star reviews began to flood his business pages, which he might have avoided if only he hadn't stooped to such a petty attempt at revenge.
They are the sparks.
These bros ain't loyal. It's pretty rare that you find a story where someone admits not only to cheating in a relationship, but that they were wrong. And yet, I found one.
Yeah,
And
that's
boy, is it juicy. A now deleted Reddit user, who I'll call Mark, posted that he was once in a serious relationship with a girl called Carly. It started off sweet, and they had each
Why
other's
would Mark
backs,
post
and
that?
Carly even helped him pay off some of his debt. She clearly cared about him a lot. But they hit a rough patch, and while they tried to fix it by talking and going to therapy, Mark decided to cope by cheating on her with Kara, her childhood best friend. Mark blamed Carly on their relationship deteriorating, but he assumed he was being real smart about cheating on her and that by hiding all the evidence, like texts and calls, Carly would never find out. So imagine his shock when one day Carly sat him down and very calmly asked if he was cheating on her.
Lol. Like, you'll find out in a second why she asked. But still, why would you post about this? It's like no reason. No reason to post about it at all.
Panicked, he
Like,
immediately
genuinely.
lied and denied it all, but she just laughed, saying she didn't think he'd admit it, and that she just wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. Why? Well, because Kara, feeling guilty, had broken down and shown her their messages a few weeks back. It was only then, when he was cornered, that Mark guiltily admitted it. She just shrugged and said, "It's fine. Oh, by the way, Louie and I are going out tonight. I've been seeing him since last week. Don't be here when I get back." That's when Mark...
That is cold. That is cold. And the video itself will tell you why, but like, it's just cold.
Mark's heart sank because Louie was his big brother.
Even colder. Yeah, this guy sums it up. Honestly, I'd love a series of backfired revenge stories. That's actually really cool.
Not just that, Louie was the golden child of the family, the one that everyone adored. Mark had always
God
felt insecure
damn.
next to him, and now it turned out Carly had been seeing him to get back at Mark for his affair with Kara. Okay, that sounds like she just leveled the playing field, except Carly knew that she could just block Kara and never have to see her again, but Louie and Mark were family. They were around each other all the time. Family events, birthdays, celebrations, and what's worse, he couldn't tell his family about it because he knew how much worse that would make him look. Carly had made sure he'd never forget about how he wronged her, or how badly his own cheating had backfired on him. Man, talk about keeping it in the family. Between Mark and Miles, whose revenge do you think backfired the worst? For cheater Mark, hit that like button, and for bad boss
because, like, what was the revenge?
Miles, hit the subscribe button down below. All done? Great. So what have we got next? Major misfire. If there's one thing you don't mess around with, it's guns. I could sit around and lecture you on gun safety all day, but I'll let Reddit user Golden Silver 61 story do the talking. Back in the late 90s, Golden was a counselor at a Boy Scout summer camp, with one of his jobs being a director of the camp's rifle range. He was very clear with the kids about where to aim the rifles they were given, up or down the range. Never at another person, loaded or unloaded. It didn't matter. Anyone who pointed a gun at someone else would be kicked off the range for good. Well, for all his warnings, one day, one kid decided it would be funny to point the gun at his friend. Golden sprinted over, grabbed the rifle, and booted the kid from the range. But he was not happy, yelling at Golden and threatening to call his dad, who was a cop. Golden couldn't have cared less, ripping up his range pass and sending him on his way. A few hours later, a patrol car rocked up to the camp and a very angry-looking cop got out. Golden could see the kid smirking. Clearly, this was his father, and he looked like he was about to give Golden a piece of his mind. The cop then approached Golden and began screaming at him, telling him he had no right to revoke his son's rifle pass and to let him back on the range that instant. Golden let the cop rant on, and when he was finally done, he simply asked, "Did your son tell you why I ripped up his pass?" But the cop didn't have an answer, and suddenly the kid looked nervous. Golden then told the cop his own son had been pointing the rifle at his friend, and the cop went red with anger. Not at Golden, but at his son. He turned on his heel and screamed at the boy to get in the car, because that was the end of his time at camp. The cop then apologized profusely to Golden and drove off with his crying, sniveling son in tow. Oh boy, mishandling a firearm and embarrassing your cop dad. I'd be amazed if that kid wasn't grounded for life. Pretty pennies. Man, people who try and get their revenge with pennies don't realize just how easily the script can get flipped on them, as it's recently happened to another loser. Back in 2021, 18-year-old Avery Sanford saw a car with a trailer pull up to her family's house. As she walked out, she watched a man she didn't recognize dump thousands of pennies on their lawn. She called her mom out, who asked the man what was happening, and he snidely replied, "This is your last child support payment." Having not seen him in years, neither of them recognized the man as Avery's father. As Avery had just turned 18 and so no longer qualified for child support from her father, he had dumped the final $800 payment of pennies on their lawn in an attempt to horribly embarrass them both before driving away laughing. It was incredibly cruel, and Avery felt like her father, who she barely knew, wanted to humiliate her personally. But Avery's mother told her not to worry. They were going to turn this into a good thing. They sorted through the coins and donated every last penny to a domestic abuse shelter, which presumably has something to do with why Avery's mom left her horrible father in the first place. After the donation was made, local news covered the small story, where it quickly picked up steam and went to the national papers. There, thousands of people saw the high road that Avery and her mom had taken, and donations to the shelter came flooding in, which fueled even more coverage. In just a few days, $47,000 was donated to the shelter from all over the world. Avery and her mom were painted as heroes. Her dad, on the other hand, oh boy. Countless journalists reached out to him for comment, and he quickly realized the mistake he'd made. He apologized and claimed he'd acted in frustration. The last thing he'd wanted to do was to drive a wedge further between him and his daughter, but the damage was done. Seeing how he'd tried to publicly disrespect her mom, Avery was quick to shoot down any chance of them ever reconciling. So not only did he destroy his reputation, but he also lost any chance of getting to know the incredible young woman too. Nice one, dingus.
You, just you, building your app. on base 44.
Cheat creep.
Oh yeah, this
Some people just love to gossip. So much so, they'll stick their nose into anyone's business, even that of people they don't know very well, just to have something to talk about. Although I reckon this next guy wished he'd kept his nose out of whatever business we're about to get into. A now deleted Reddit user account, who I'll call Anna, once worked in an office and was chatting with her colleagues in the break room. They were talking about how much they hated cheaters, and Anna agreed. Cheaters are the worst. All of a sudden, a coworker called Ken, who she'd gotten a promotion over the year before but still didn't know very well, burst forward and screamed that she was a hypocrite. Confused, she asked what his problem was, and he showed the room his phone, and on it was a picture of Anna at a bar holding hands with another
homophobic
lady. Ken looked triumphant, like he'd gotten revenge. But at this point, Anna was incredibly creeped out. That was her and her girlfriend Ruby at the bar, but she hadn't seen Ken that night. So he'd been there covertly taking pictures of her, which, as they barely knew each other, gave her the willies. To the room, she said, yes, that was a picture of her and her partner, Ruby. Ken grinned and yelled that he knew she was actually dating a man called Simon and that she was cheating on him. All eyes were glued to Anna now, and boy was she annoyed. So she calmly confirmed that, yes, she was also dating Simon, and Simon and Ruby were also dating each other. The three of them and Simon and Ruby were also dating each other. The three of them were in a relationship together because they were polyamorous. Initially, Ken, now super embarrassed, refused to believe her until Anna got out pictures of the three of them together. Ken was so embarrassed, he turned beet red. She finished the interaction by saying to the room that while her private life was technically none of their business, she found it very creepy and unprofessional of Ken to take pictures of her without announcing his presence. Stalkerish, even. And then left the room. She could hear her colleagues all turn on Ken the second she left, having made them all look like they were talking behind her back, which they clearly had been. Anna then swiftly filed a report on the incident and went on about her day. She didn't think anything more of it until she received a message from her higher-ups a week later. Apparently, they'd interviewed Ken and several others about the incident, and it had become clear that Ken simply wasn't a good fit for the company, and so he'd been let go. Yeah, sometimes it's better to just keep your nose to yourself. April Fool. Pranks can be fun, but they're only fun if everyone's laughing, which is something the workers at a UK post office delivery branch weren't doing back in April 2023. It was during this time that post office staff were striking over wage rises, as the cost of living was fast outstripping what they were earning. This was also during a time where a scandal had rocked the post office, one where a software issue had wrongly placed many postmasters and mistresses in jeopardy after misreporting their takings, meaning many, over 900, were falsely prosecuted and some imprisoned. Between the strikes and the investigations, tensions were incredibly high. So workers at a post office delivery branch in Gloucester North were delighted when they saw a poster had been put up by their manager claiming workers would receive a backdated 11% pay rise, along with a whole list of other conditions they'd been hoping for. As the poster instructed, many shared it on social media. Hundreds of other workers all breathed a huge sigh of relief. It was almost too good to be true. And then they realized what date it was.
When I first started Eve, I was a minor, and I was really tired of getting blown up by people all the time.
That's
April 1st, April Fool's Day. In a tone-deaf move, one of the managers had mocked up the poster to pull a prank on their striking staff. Now, the staff may have seen the funny side of it and been able to brush it off, but when it reached the internet, thousands of people were furious about how cruel and unfunny it was in the current climate. It even reached the tabloids and national headlines ran with the story, which eventually forced the big bosses over at the Royal Mail to put out a statement, apologizing profusely, with statements from the now horrendously disgraced manager apologizing for their conduct, But even then, the public still called for the manager to be sacked. Oof. Well, when all his co-workers lost whatever respect they had for him, I hope he saw the funny side of it. Baby got trapped. Bringing kids into revenge plots is a low blow by any standard. And I say this as someone who's made videos on a lot of extreme revenge stories. Seriously, you can go check out the entire playlist I have dedicated to them on my channel. But when this next, now deleted, Reddit user decided to share his story that involved at least one kid, I couldn't not tell you guys.
I know this
it's
one.
just
It's like my
unbelievable.
favorite.
So, Dan had been together with his long-term partner Stacy for 4 years. They didn't have much money, but they were happy, or at least Dan thought they were. Until one day, Stacy began acting distant. She changed the password on her phone, spent hours messaging other people, and would often come home late from supposed work meetings. Sadly, having been cheated on before, Dan knew the signs and chalked it all up to her cheating on him. But he didn't have any concrete proof, so he didn't say anything, instead choosing to pretend it wasn't really happening. However, one day when he returned to their humble apartment, he realized all of Stacy's stuff was missing. She'd left him without so much as a text. He was crushed, but consoled himself with the fact that his gut instinct about her cheating had probably been right. He continued living his life, refusing to let it keep him down when, about 4 weeks later, something wild happened. He won the lottery. I guess he was due a bit of good luck. It wasn't Mega Millions, but enough to set him up for a good long while. He moved out of his humble apartment, got the keys to a swanky new abode, and began dating a lovely young lady. They were getting ready to start a family together when one day, a good 7 months since they'd broken up, Stacy knocked on his door, heavily pregnant. She lay into him, claiming he'd hid the lottery winnings from her, and she'd had to track him down because the baby was his. He'd left her pregnant and stranded, and now, as revenge, it was his duty to provide a good lifestyle for her and their child, as she was due in a month. Initially, Dan was too stunned to speak. Hadn't she left him? And now, clearly, after hearing about his big win, she was just after the money. But this is where Dan flipped her wicked plot against her with 3 little words. But I'm infertile? Yep. As Dan and his new lady had been trying to start a family, Dan had discovered he was, in fact, infertile. They'd initially been sad. This meant 2 things. 1, Stacy's baby couldn't be his, and 2, if she was, as she claimed, 8 months pregnant, then that confirmed that she had in fact been cheating on him while they were still together. Oh, mama. Stacy, flustered, stormed off and never darkened his doorway again, while Dan, his now wife, and their 2 adopted kids have never been happier. Sniper Wolf versus Jack's Films. If you've been on YouTube as long as I have, then you probably know Sniper Wolf, aka Leah Sheilish.
Yeah.
Through gaming, trying out hacks, and reacting to videos, she's amassed more than 34 million followers on YouTube to date. Now, Leah reacts to a lot of videos from TikTok and YouTube, typically without crediting the original video owners, which has caused other YouTubers, such as Jack's Films, to call her out. With around 5 million followers at the time I'm making this, he's reacted to Leah's reaction videos critiquing her video style and calling out her creditless takes. The situation soon escalated, with Leah hitting back at Jack with a series of tweets, calling him out for, reacting to her, and then Jack hit back, then Leah. Yeah, their digital beef got messy. But then Leah decided to take it a step further, and one incredibly dumb step at that. Now, Leah didn't know Jack in real life, but she did some digging, found his home address, and then turned up at his family's house unannounced. Did she knock on the door and ask to talk about their feud like adults? Did she heck? To one-up her revenge, she posted a picture of his house on her Instagram stories to her 5 million followers, doxing him. Now, doxing is revealing identifying information with malicious intent, something that's really looked down on by the internet community because of how dangerous it is. And considering Sniper Wolf revealed his house to her 5 million strong Instagram audience with an ominous "Let's Talk" message attached, yeah, that's pretty threatening if you ask me. While it's not illegal, doxing is considered adjacent to crimes like harassment and stalking, something Jack was not going to let go. Even though the pics disappeared from Leah's stories, Jack doubled down on the ordeal. He made a video and several tweets about it, which went viral. Big commentary YouTubers covered the story, lambasting Leah's actions, and people contacted YouTube demanding she be held accountable. YouTube eventually struck her Sniper Wolf channel with temporary demonetization, costing her thousands of dollars. And while she'd initially defended her actions, she suddenly backtracked and publicly apologized. But the damage was done. The backlash was so severe that she's since turned off the comments to all of her latest videos, and where she would once routinely upload some 4 or 5 times a week, that's dropped down to just once a week at the time I'm making this video.
With sensitive skin, it's natural to worry about using retinol. Introducing Aveeno Adrenal Serum with oat and cranberry extract, a natural retinol alternative for youthful and radiant skin. Aveeno.
Booking.com has all kinds of stays because a laid-back beach house is right for some. But not.
She cemented her reputation as an internet villain, all because she wanted to get back at Jack. Looks like Sniper's aim was off. Way off. Kate Corain. Being a new author is hard work in this day and age. Competition is fierce, and getting people to buy your book instead of other new authors in the same category is an uphill battle. And that was a pressure that aspiring author Kate Corain really felt back in 2023. Her debut fantasy book, Crown of Starlight, was being released along with the works of many other new fantasy authors. However, Kate felt insecure and decided she needed to give her book an edge. Not by trying some fancy new marketing technique, but by sabotaging her fellow debut authors. She headed over to the book review website Goodreads and created a bunch of fake anonymous accounts. She then systematically went after other authors whose books were in the same category as Crown of Starlight and gave each of them 1-star reviews. She then repeated this process hundreds of times, purposefully reducing the average rating of at least 20 books. She thought she'd gotten away with it. However, Canadian author Jiran J. Zhao noticed something weird about what had been happening. Because the accounts leaving 1-star reviews on all these new books had also left glowing 5-star reviews on Crown of Starlight. Kate had been so arrogant she figured she may as well boost her own book while tearing down others. Jiran then documented everything in a 31-page file and shared it with the community, accusing Kate of strategically review bombing in a tweet that went viral. Kate's plan backfired on a catastrophic level. But instead of admitting what she did, she unbelievably dug the hole deeper. She created a fake chat log with an imaginary friend who she claimed admitted to her that she'd done it to try to help her, and then shared the screenshots. Either she hoped the community was too trusting and/or too stupid to see that this was fake, but they were neither, and they refused to believe Kate. Amidst all the controversy, Kate's publisher quickly announced they would no longer be releasing Crown of Starlight, her agency dropped her, and the community turned its back on her. In a desperate attempt to salvage something, Kate came clean. She released an apology, blaming her actions on a mixture of new medication and bad mental health. Here's the kicker, though. All of the authors she'd review bombed had been people of color. So essentially, her apology looked like she was saying her medication made her racist. Yikes. Kate's gone quiet since then, and I know a vast portion of the book-loving community will hope it stays that way. Love stings. Breakups can really, really hurt. Trust me. But some hurt more than others, as one woman who we'll call Ingong in Cambodia discovered back in 2015. She had been dating her boyfriend Chan for a while, but after his family discovered Ingong had previously been arrested for jewelry theft and illegal substance-related crimes, they convinced him to break it off. She was heartbroken, but also hell-bent on getting revenge. They took a short break, then met up at Chan's home a few days later and decided to go for a motorbike ride, with her as a passenger sat on the back. Neither of them was wearing a helmet, which would have saved them not just from a crash, but from what Ingong was about to do.
Yeah.
As they were traveling, she pulled out a plastic bottle, which, so this video doesn't get struck down by the YouTube algorithm, had a malicious substance in it and went to vengefully pour it over his head as he was driving. If she couldn't have him, no one could. The only problem is that when you're traveling at high speeds, wind makes pouring liquids on a target very hard, and long story short, that malicious substance blew back into her own face. A little did get on Chan's face, and he stopped the bike immediately. Screaming in pain, she fled the scene. Chan was taken to a hospital where he made a full recovery and a police report. And before long, there was a pretty serious warrant out for Ingong's arrest. Looks like she got a face full of karma. Which of these revenge plots do you think?
That was it. Okay, so, bye.